Rev Mel on Talking Sex Radio is awaiting your call, so call Rev Mel.
Welcome back to the Rev Mel Show, sponsored by TSRnetwork.com, and I'm here with my wonderful guest, Guy Baldwin, and we're going to be talking a lot more about the old guard and where he's from. But let's talk about how can you talk about all this stuff? What education have you had, and where have you been, and why you can talk about? Did we get that right?
I think I understood your question.
I can't say that word. Credential.
What?
Credential.
Credential.
Credential. See, credential. Yeah. What's your credentials?
Okay. Well, I came out into the scene in 1964, and the first group of people I fell in with were old guard leathermen, about half of whom were World War II veterans.
Wow.
By the time I knew them, they were around age 40 at least, and some, 20 years older than that. Mm-hmm. And they were the first generation old guard folks, so they were like my surrogate parents. And I was like their teenage kid. And those are the people who sort of introduced me into leather sex, radical sex culture. Mm-hmm. And in 1969, members of that sort of group that took me under their wing formed the first gay motorcycle club in that area. Mm-hmm. In 1969, and I became an associate member. They wouldn't allow me to become an associate member until I graduated from college.
Well, they were watching out for you.
They were. They pissed me off. They wouldn't let me go on bike runs with them during the warm months. Oops.
Never mind.
Unless I brought homework with me. I mean, they were expecting to see me, with my nose in a book, some percentage of the time on the motorcycle events that we went to, and they would get on my case. Mm-hmm. It's like, we don't see you studying.
Wow.
And they kept my shoulder to the wheel all the way through school.
So, but did they also teach? I mean, let's talk about what is it with old guard? You hear it all the time. For people that have not experienced it, they'll talk about, I was taught old guard. I mean, what is old guard?
Well, that's the problem, of course, is that there is this thing, particularly in the het world, that wants very much to glorify and elevate to the level of liturgy the old guard. Mm-hmm. Because I guess it must be the craving people have for wanting tradition. Mm-hmm. And people, particularly in the het world, talk about the old guard as if it was this uniform phenomenon.
Well, no, didn't all the old guards look exactly like, what is it, Finley's photographs of, the tight leather and the nice bust?
You mean Tom of Finland?
Yeah, and the...
Did you say nice busted? No, none of the guys in the Tom of Finland artwork had nice busts.
But they had these big pecs.
Big pecs, yes.
Big pecs.
But busts, no busty boys.
I didn't use the word bust. I went like
you this. Went like this. And what does this mean? And
pecs. But I mean, the little handkerchief out the back. I mean, the hankies. I mean,
the hanky code, right?
Yeah, the hanky code.
Well, the hanky code started in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Later, and then proliferated largely because the guys that were managing the Pleasure Chest in Los Angeles decided to expand it and have a lot of fun with it.
I know. I have one of the Pleasure Chest things, and it's huge. And
Yeah, and they're the ones that added stuff like silver lame and gold lame and all those colors that had never been part of the hanky code, just as a kind of spoof on it,
they
really.
even added a dirty jockstrap.
Okay, that's entirely possible. My point is that the old guard was not this uniform, homogeneous thing from coast to coast. Each of the sort of gay male enclaves in each city looked more different than it looked similar. And I'll give you a perfect example. On the East Coast, dominants would wear keys on the right, and submissives would wear keys on the left. But on the West Coast, it was exactly the opposite. Dominants would wear a set of keys. Throw me my keys.
So
I'll show you what I'm talking
and
about
if
when I
you're in
say
the-
a set of keys. We're going to have to give you some pitching lessons, young man. And this is a set of keys, fairly typical set of, old guard Leatherman keys, like that.
Okay.
And they would, clip to a belt loop on one side or the other. And that was, how you would be able to tell who was the top and who was the bottom. But there was a difference on the East Coast versus the West Coast. So there was an opportunity for a lot of confusion around that, as you might guess.
yeah, if you're stuck in the Midwest, you'd really be in trouble.
Well,
But we have a chat question. Richard?
Yes, Arma Fair, who is in the chat room, would like to know, is the old guard, as it seemed to be, still in existence?
no, is my answer. The old guard was once upon a time the only gateway for gay men into the world of radical sexuality. If you wanted to do outside the box sexuality, you had to go through the old guard gateways.
Yeah. You could even be a heterosexual. You still had to go through the old. This is what I
I don't know
told.
how heterosexuals managed
Yeah.
these things. I think they would use classified ads in things like Justice Weekly or a few of the contact magazines that were available to them. And in the heterosexual world, there was this classified sort of code words. Strict school mistress has openings for recalcitrant schoolboys after hours or on weekends, and you'd run across ads like that in the het world, and that was understood to be a kind of code with which you could make contact with one another. But in the gay men's world, you had to go through the old guard. That was it.
You didn't have codes like that in the gay leather world?
And we didn't have any publications until 1975.
And which was the first publication?
Drummer Magazine was
Magazine.
first appeared in 1975. We didn't have much of a literature really to speak of. But to return to the chat room question, the old guard as the one and only way into the world of radical sexuality, that hasn't been true for at least 15 years in most places. Because once gay male motorcycle clubs began to appear after World War II, they had to have a place to hang out. And so the bike clubs began to patronize little neighborhood bars, and that's how leather bars were created. It was bike clubs that created leather bars, not the other way around. Yeah. So once people found out that there were leather bars in cities, then they could go into the leather bar and begin to start having contact.
But not every leather bar was experiencing BDSM activities, or were they?
The bar wasn't, no, but people who did those
yeah.
things went to those places and could meet one another. And once the leather bar phenomenon spread coast to coast, then going through the motorcycle club doorway was no longer the only way to get there. So the old guard is absolutely not what it once was.
So did that create that stereotypical sort of look, the way that people thought that the old guard was supposed to look? You know, with you know, the leather pants and, you know, the leather cap and.
Well, the look is is interesting. In 1967, maybe, the Yardley Corporation was advertising, was doing an advertising campaign for its new, help me, shaving
cream?
aftershave, that's the word I want, thank you. And the ad campaign showed the backside of a very shapely guy from about the knees up to about middle of his back. He was naked from the waist up. And there was a bottle of the aftershave in his right rear pocket and a pair of black leather pants, skin tight with a black leather belt. And that was the ad. The switchboard at the Yardley Corporation was flooded with phone calls the day the ad was released, asking, no, not about the aftershave, but where a pair of pants like that could be had.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not. I'm not kidding at all. Those pants were made by a gay leather tailor in New York City, who was the Marquis de Suede. And
who knew?
He had made those pants for this Yardley ad, and immediately people all over the country, men particularly, of course, wanted to know where they could have a pair of leather pants that fit like skin.
Wow, we've got a chat question.
So there were lots of features of how the sort of gay male old guard leather thing got created.
Yeah,
and strangely enough, this Yardley ad, you'd never really know that. And I'll bet you that if you were to ask 1,000 gay men in the leather sex world today how that all got started, that none of them would know. None would know about the Yardley ad, which is, I think, pretty funny, of course. Not that that's important.
But
I mean, who cares how it got started at some level? But the history of that, I think, is kind of amusing.
But you can be at a party, and someone can say, well, do you know how it all started? And you can have that information.
Yeah, I don't know. It's my brain is just full of all kinds of stuff like that have no particular meaning or value. Really.
Well, I hope we can get it out of you.
It's just kind of,
I like this.
It's funny. Well, you know, I don't know what I know until somebody asks, and then it sort of rolls out of me.
We have a chat question.
Is that a good thing?
That's a very good thing.
Okay.
Yes, that's always a good thing. Boo Boo Bunny in the chat room would like to know, how do the new young gay leathermen feel about the old traditions and the protocols of the guard?
Mostly, well, first of all, let me say I'm not entirely certain that I'm qualified to comment about how new young gay leathermen feel about anything. It is my impression that they don't think much of the old traditional protocols at all, and find them kind of restrictive and annoying. Because they don't have a lot of meaning for young leathermen. So there is a real big sort of generation gap between young gay leathermen and the old guard guys. And that's a consequence of HIV, largely, I think.
Well, let's talk about some of the protocol, because,
Protocol's a new word.
People
forget that. I never heard the word before about 1997.
Really?
Really. Protocol is a way to talk